The Process Podcast, breaking down the daily habits, processes, and tools of high achievers. Now, here's your host, Brad Wilson.
Hey there, ladies and gentlemen. This is the host of the Process Podcast, Brad Wilson, the show where I analyze and dissect the daily systems and processes of amazing human beings. If you're like me and always looking for an edge in your day-to-day life, take a moment and subscribe to the show. Each and every week on The Process, my guests like best-selling author V.E. Schwab, Olympic gold medalist Adam Creek, and co-host of the Rise Together podcast, Dave Hollis, bring the heat and provide amazing wisdom on how to live a productive, inspiring, and fulfilling life. On today's show, my guest is author, speaker, performer, photographer, blogger, creator, C.C. Chapman. C.C. came on my radar through my assistant, Peter. Peter somehow happened across a YouTube video of C.C. speaking at a conference and told me, Brad, I really think you ought to watch this video. So I did. I was sitting at Starbucks watching C.C.'s keynote with my headphones on and had to fight down the urge to stand up and yell, yes! It's pretty safe to say that the things C.C. creates and talks about resonate with me on a pretty deep level, which is why I was so pumped when he accepted my invitation to come on the podcast and speak with me. In our conversation, you'll learn why acting hopeful, even when you're not feeling it, is a pretty big deal, why just do it is an incredible motto for life, how to find and connect with your tribe, why you should take the leap and create that thing in your brain, even if a million other people have already made something similar, and much more. So without any further ado, it is my profound honor to bring to you my conversation with C.C. Chapman. C.C., I want to start this thing out by asking you to tell me a story about your grandfather on your dad's side and how he shaped you and molded you into really the human that you are today.
Yeah, my grandfather Chapman had a huge influence on me. I mean, a couple of things. He introduced me to creating. I mean, he was a photographer, had a dark room in his basement, used to go down there and play all the time. I wish I had appreciated it more. And we also, because I was living in Maryland as a little kid and he was up here in New Hampshire, and we used to write letters back and forth. But of course, I didn't know how to write yet. So we used to draw pictures. And we'd send pictures back and forth, and we wrote all the time. And, you know, I still have them. I have an envelope of all the letters, the little doodles we used to do. But he instilled in me a love of creating because he used to make movies. He used to draw for me all the time. Photography is definitely in my blood and in my DNA. I think about all the time how if he could see what I can do with an iPhone, or if he could see, he built model airplanes, even though I was never into that. He built model airplanes from scratch and was actually building a real airplane when he passed away. But like, I think about it, if he could see what I could do with a drone today, it would blow his mind. And yeah, losing him at such a young age, I think about it now when I think about the fact that, you know, my kids are really blessed that they've got their, you know, my son's about to turn 20 and my daughter's 17 and they still have both their grandparents. And I think that's huge for them. And the fact that my younger sister never met my grandfather. So he, in just the short 9 years he was with us, you know, and I don't remember probably the first 3 or 4 of them, he just instilled so much in me, and I'm really, really fortunate to at least have that much time with him.
How did it feel as a kid when you looked at the things or consumed the things that he had created?
I loved it. I mean, I can vividly remember these 3 drawings that were just simple pen drawings on an 8.5 by 11 piece of white paper. One was of the Spirit of St. Louis, one was of the Mayflower, and one was of the Eiffel Tower. And they were just simple drawings. And I just loved them because I was like, I can't do that. And I used to doodle a lot. And my dad still gets on my case saying that computers stopped my doodling career because I used to draw all the time. I just found other outlets. But I love them, especially because they're gone. Because unfortunately, a couple years before he passed away, there was a fire at my grandparents' house. All his negatives, gone. All those drawings, except for the letters he had mailed me, gone. So all that's gone. So all I have is the memories. And that's why it's like etched in my head, and it still kills me that all that history is gone. And now as a photographer, I back up stuff multiple times just in case, God forbid, something happens.
Yeah, that's very understandable. I think my worst fear as an interviewer is like getting done and be like, all right, CC, talk to you next week, and then clicking the record button and be like, oh yeah, no, what did I just do?
I had that happen once with an interview where I did a podcast, and something I've never had in all the years of podcasting, but something was corrupted with the file. There was all these weird noises and interference and skips, and I had to call the person. I'm like, can we do this interview again? I felt so horrible. It felt so amateur and unprofessional, and it wasn't a friend or anything, so otherwise I could get away with it. I felt so bad.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things from what I've read that just happened to everybody. At some point, I had a power outage on my desktop computer, doing it, power outage, and all of a sudden just gone, like,
oh no,
in the middle of it. So can't prepare for everything, but yeah, that's really unfortunate that you lost those drawings.
Yeah.
These lessons on creation, can you tell me how that affected you through school? Did you choose a specific career path? I guess you're not choosing your career path in school, but you're naturally drawn to certain things versus other things. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, it's funny because my 5th grade teacher, who I am still in touch with, Mrs. Pett, I can't call her Susan. She tries to get me to all the time. She saw a rambunctious kid who had a lot of energy and said, hey, CC, you ever thought about doing theater? No, I haven't thought of doing theater. And that one little moment changed everything, because while I didn't major in theater or anything like that, that opened up, the fact that I liked performing. I liked being on a stage. It's why I love speaking nowadays. It led to doing college radio and doing theater in college. And it's funny because I tell this stuff to my students all the time now, where I went to college. I thought I was going to go to school for marketing. That's what I thought I wanted to major in. But everybody told me it'd be too hard to get a job. Don't go for that. So, this was, the start of the internet. And I was like, I'll go for computers. I'm a geek. I love computers. Why not? My 4th grade teacher, Mr. Davenport, gave me exposure to a first computer, and my world, between that and theater. So I went for computers, and now it's funny because, I made a life of doing marketing. So it's a weird way, but it's funny how those little moments, a 4th grade teacher putting a computer in front of me and a 5th grade teacher saying, get on stage and put on pajamas and be the Lorax, changed everything. And, while I don't remember all my teachers, I certainly remember those 2 teachers. And, it all set me up for a path where, I went onto a business school. I went to Bentley University, where, it's a business school, but I liked the fact when I was looking at schools, they had a liberal arts part. Everybody had to take a liberal arts core of classes, and then my business classes. And, I unofficially minored in philosophy because I was interested in different things. And I was fortunate to have parents who were just kind of like, do what you want to do, rather than you need to be a lawyer or you need to be this. So it definitely shaped my career. And even though my career has not been anything near the traditional ladder at all, it's been a little bit of a hurricane.
Let's start. Tell me about your career. Let's talk about it, because sure. I think as somebody who helps facilitate creating things, I'm fascinated by, how you can carve out a niche in the world, just creating things and telling stories to people.
Yeah, so my career started, I came out of school and I did a 3-year stint with government consulting, suit and tie every day, working down in DC, building doing programs and Y2K fixes and all that stuff. For all the youngins out there, Google it. You can find out what the Y2K bug was and wasn't.
Dating yourself, Y2K.
I am. But and I did that for a while, and then I moved back to Boston, and still worked. I did a lot of intranets, usability stuff, but always on the side. Right before the end of college, some buddies and I started making films. We had always been the actors for a buddy of ours who majored in filmmaking, and he used us as actors because we were the theater geeks. And so we kept making all these movies, and this was pre-YouTube. Heck, this was I remember when Premiere 1.0 came out. We went nuts because we could finally edit our videos. We hadn't been able to do it until then. And so I was doing that on the side. I taught myself HTML while I was what's called on the beach consulting, because I wasn't billable at the time, so I had to do something. So I taught myself HTML. I just kind of did all this stuff on the side. I know nowadays they call it a side hustle, which I've always hated that term.
Why?
But the word hustle got so just, I don't know. It got bastardized. There's a thing right above my desk that says "Stay humble, hustle hard." I think too many people forget the humble part. I mean, I'm a New Hampshire blue collar family, so working hard, making providing for your family is just in my DNA. I don't see that as a hustle. I see that as just life. And so I don't know. Hustle, just the word just bugs me. Too many people have just bastardized the word hustle.
But there's not a better compliment in the baseball sense, though, of hustle.
True. No, for sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember yelling at my kid playing lacrosse. Hustle out there. Get going.
Right.
Yeah, that's one thing. But I don't know. Our whole culture has gotten swamped up by this, got to be busy all the time. I've always been, work super hard, but work efficiently. Don't waste time. I mean, get the stuff done rather than working. There's nothing sexy about working 90 hours a week or whatever, however many, pick a number. But there is no magic number either. I mean, if you get it done in 5, if you're Tim Ferriss, you can do a 4-hour work week or whatever. But, I don't know. Hustle's just one of those weird words that tweaks me out.
I could go on. I'm not going to get into the words that annoy me, but I understand the connotation with hustle. There's a lot of words that have lost value and meaning because they're way overused. Louis C.K. talked about hilarious and how genius, hilarious, ultimate, influencer. A lot of words just get overused.
Influencer.
And
oh my God. Yeah. Especially as a marketer. It's funny. I have two, I teach marketing, I teach business, and I've lived in this space for, I've been blogging forever and podcasting forever, and I get tagged with the influencer word sometimes, and I don't know, that one's got dirtied and soiled too, for sure.
Yeah, it doesn't even mean anything.
No. I mean, I have people who are influential to me, for sure, but it has nothing to do with how many followers they have, has nothing to do with how pretty they look on Instagram, it has nothing to do with that.
I don't know if you've seen Jessica Jones, but when I think of influencer, I think of Kilgrave in season 1. Just follow me, do this, do that. That's an influencer, right? There are teachers. There are teachers. There are people who add value to your life. Yep. Anyway, like I said, I'm going to go off on the rails here. So speaking of teaching marketing, being in marketing, can you tell me about your process of creating real connections with human beings in a world that can sometimes feel pretty superficial and shallow?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, I think at the core, the only way, especially if you're thinking about it from a marketing standpoint, I think the core thing is you can't, it's a balancing act, I guess, because where you have to deliver results, right? You have to sell your product, fund your company, whatever it is you're trying to do on one hand. But if you truly want a connection, on the other hand, you've got to think about the people watching it, or consuming it, reading it, whatever the medium is. We always talk about creating an emotional response. And if you're thinking about, we need 1 million views of this video first, if that's your first motivating factor, you're never going to get that connection. I mean, they always talk about, boobs and kittens powers YouTube. You can automatically get likes if you have either of those. And now it's humor. But at the end of the day, if you're trying to create something, my philosophy's always been, at least for me when I'm creating stuff, is I want to create something that makes me feel good, whatever it is, whether it's getting just something out of my head. Sometimes I have to write because of that, or if it's taking a picture. I used to tell people with podcasts, I'm like, you know what, if you get joy out of it, if you feel accomplishment out of it, other people will appreciate it. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, finding listenership, finding readers, finding, people to buy your product. That takes a lot of hustle there. I'll use it in the good. It takes a lot of work, but I just think as long as you're creating stuff that makes you happy first and foremost, that gives you satisfaction. It's why I wrote a book on content marketing and then followed up with a self-help motivational book. If I was strictly focused on the best business move, the best way to make money, I would have followed up content rules by making, we talked about at one point, content rules for government, content rules for nonprofits, be the content guy. But writing about content, writing blog posts every day about that sort of stuff just gave me no love, no joy at all. And that's why, if you look at any of my content, my Instagram feed, maybe I should make it all pretty stuff every day. But, I share slices of life. I share moments in my life. It's the way I've always approached things. And it's worked for me. Will it work for everybody else? I think it could if people actually tried to be human first rather than feeding the algorithm. But, you got to know how to feed the algorithm too if you want to make, any sort of dent and get on people's radar, unfortunately.
Yeah, I talked about it with a couple of people before. Following your bliss with Scott Meyer, doing the things that you're drawn to do. And Victoria Schwab also said that, she's a world famous author now, and her first successful book, giantly successful book, was a book called Vicious. And it's the first book she wrote for herself.
Yep.
And then from that point forward, every book she's written since then is for herself, for that version of herself in that part of her life. And, if you think about it, we're special. Each of us, don't want to get in trouble here. We're all special as human beings, but we're not all unique, right? Me, there's millions of people that are just like me, have very similar interests, that will like the same things that I like. So if I make the things that I need, that move me, that I love, there's a market for it. They're just different little carbon copies of me.
Yeah, and the internet for all the bad and evil things that came about from social media and the internet, there's been more good in my mind, at least, because it allowed those people who have similar interests to you that might have never realized there were other people out there. No matter how small of a niche it is, there's a buddy of mine wrote a book about getting autographs from people, and I was like, something I know nothing about. But obviously, there's people out there about, it's not a huge demographic, but still, you find your tribe. Seth Godin talks about finding your tribe all the time. You find that tribe, it's the best thing in the world. And and plus, like you said, there's a bunch of people like you, there's a bunch of people like me, but nobody's going to say it, write it, create it, take a picture of it exactly like I am going to. And that's where, everybody kind of forgets that. And that's why whenever you see us all the time, when people start just creating to feed the algorithms out there, things start all looking the same. Oh, let's take the pretty camping shot with our coffee mug, or the hand behind the pretty girl, and the sunset. And it's like, wait, I've seen this picture before. That it all just starts blending together, and it's like, no, I want stuff that stands out and that's unique. And
when we make something based on our life experience, our perspective, I could write a book on the same exact topics that you wrote a book, and it would be completely different. It would have a different feel, a different sound. There'd be different stories, a different vibe. Maybe the end result, the summation of the information is very similar and the same, but it would be a completely different book. So whatever it is that you're creating yourself, just do it. Just get out there and do it if you're driven and moved to do it.
Well, I vividly remember being about halfway through writing Amazing Things Will Happen and talking to my editor. We were having a drink in Austin, and I said, wait a minute. Here I am, this 38-year-old guy writing a book on life advice. What right do I have to do that? And I said, that should be written by like some 80-year-old person at the end of their life. And she laughed at me. She's like, well, CC, would you be angry if someone else gave this advice, or would you rather you give it out there? I said, well, I want to give it out there. She's like, well, then just shut up and write it. It's that, I've heard it called imposter syndrome, where, you question yourself, who am I to write, create, whatever this is. And what's funny is the more interviews you do, the more things you listen to, everybody suffers from that. Some of the people you'd be like, oh my gosh, that person, she's at the top of her game. She would never feel that way. And she does. And so does he or she or they, they all feel, everybody feels that. I think it's part of our human DNA to feel like, who am I to do this? But, you get past that. It's the people who get past that and go, you know what, I need to. That's what at the end of the day, when people ask me why I create stuff I do, I say, I need to, because otherwise the voices in my head get too loud. I get out of balance. I have to get out in nature and take pictures. If I'm sitting in front of a screen too long, Black Mirrors definitely starts happening. I can start going crazy. So I create for me first. I wish more people did that.
Yeah. I feel that every day, no matter what. Professional poker player for 12 years. And when I started taking on students, I thought, who am I to help these guys? Yeah. Like, who am I to be a teacher? Even though this is my only source of income for a decade plus, I still think like, who am I? And I think you can actually leverage that to your advantage if you want to give more effort and more energy. At least that's what I did with my students. I said, who am I to teach these guys? Who am I to be worth $175 an hour that they're paying me, right? Yeah. So I'm going to do everything in my power, in my ability to make sure they get way more than $175 an hour out of this experience. There's always fear, no matter what.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, under promise and over deliver. You can never go wrong with that.
Right. And once you get through that fear one time and then 2 times and then 5 times, it doesn't ever go away, but it gets a little bit easier.
I tell my students all the time, I'm like, listen, and students are funny because, like, I've spoken in front of massive crowds. A keynote's one thing; they don't fight back. Students are going to ask questions; they're going to challenge you. Yeah. And I tell students all the time, I'm like, listen, I said, I get nervous every single day I get up in front of class. I get a little nervous because what if I just totally blank? What if I screw up? What if someone asks me question that, like, I remember last year I had a student who was an economics major and he was taking this business fundamentals class, which is literally 101. And I was covering economics, like, hey, we're going to cover economics at 30,000 feet. Feel free to jump in if I say something wrong, but don't go too deep. I can't teach economics. It's not, and I remember, and he was really cool, but I was so worried. So I'm like, this kid knows. He's going to be like, dude, Professor Chapman, you're totally wrong. And he was cool about it. He's been a great student since, but I always remember I was so nervous about that one class.
Yeah, he's going to get you fired. He's going to tell on you. What is this guy doing? Get him out of here. There's a quote that I've heard you reference that if you don't value yourself, nobody else will. Mm-hmm. Could you tell me what that quote means to you?
Well, it means a lot of things. But one of the biggest ones, in the context I usually use it, is when you're charging for your services online. It's really, really, really easy to be taken advantage of in this world. Hey, we can give you exposure, especially when you're starting out first, when you're really starting out, somebody approaches, hey, you want to write a guest post for my blog? Yeah, I would love that. But at some point, you got to value yourself, because the honest truth is, if you give it all away for free all the time, nobody's going to question you, because why would they? If I go to somebody and say, hey, I want to hire you to take pictures of an event, or hey, I want to hire you to do this, and they say, oh, yeah, sure, I'll be happy to do that for free, why would I ever go back and say, no, I want to pay you? It's not human nature to do it. And I just think more and more people need to realize you do have value. Even if you're brand new at what you're doing, you charge for something. Still this day, I'm part of a speakers group on Facebook, and every single day, these people who are paid lots of money to speak are approached and said, well, we don't pay our speakers to speak. And they, and saying no to an opportunity where you might be good exposure is really difficult. And the sooner you start saying, no, I have a certain value, whatever it is, and that value can change over time. It should change over time as you get better and more established, but you have a certain value. And I think, humans get, especially in today's internet world, they allow people to take advantage of themselves, of other people so quickly. And I just want more people to realize that, it starts at home. It really does. Even if that's where the imposter syndrome comes from too, because saying, well, I'm worth it, damn it, and then asking for money or asking for a fee or asking for something more is tough. I can promote and pimp anybody else. I suck at doing it for myself. It's not what I like doing, but I know I have to do it because nobody else is going to stand up for me.
Yeah, that's the 100% truth. There's not going to be any CC pimping person out there on a megaphone telling everybody to check your stuff out.
No, not unless I pay him to pimp for me. But
then they're
that's a whole other conversation.
They're publicists, and they're at $80 an hour, right? Yeah. Do you have a process, any method for, in a situation, asking to be paid for a project when they don't offer, but you know that there's value? Any way to tactfully go about doing that?
Well, what I usually, thankfully I've got, having like I know sometimes it's like, well, you can't pay a fee. Okay, well, I've got these 2 books. Would you consider buying books for the attendees? I also, especially when it comes specifically to speaking, one of the oldest tactics that I certainly didn't come up with this, but that I always say is, well, what if you found another sponsor to cover my fee and they become the keynote sponsor? And, because you're always looking for another sponsor, and they get to sponsor the keynote, and maybe they come on stage and introduce me beforehand. That's a simple tactic. I always tell events, I'm willing to work with you, whatever it is. And I've done things where, like they made a VIP dinner or something where they like upsold people and they use that fee to pay me or whatnot. I've always told people I am more than willing to work with you to make it work. I think that quickly tells you whether or not they're on board. Because if you're like, I'm willing to work with you, and they're like, yeah, no, it's just like, okay, that life's too short. Go someplace else. And I've gotten really good, although it took me a long time, just being able to say no. And there's Derek Sivers, who started a company called CD Baby back in the day, now does a bunch of things. I totally steal it from him all the time. He has this thing called the hell yeah test, where he either says no or he says hell yeah. If it's like, yeah, no, it's not allowed. And I try to live that way now, where I either get really excited and I'm like, let's do this, or I say no. Now, granted, a lot of times it's stuff in between. But I try to minimize that stuff. But yeah, just always realize that, people are willing to work. Like, I love bartering is a great thing. I've done that, stuff, well, can you promote this or do something? I've done that too. But if they're not willing to work, if you just say, hey, I'd love to make this work, what can we do? And they just kind of balk at it, I walk away as fast as possible. And the problem is they're going to find somebody who will do it for free or under your value. And that's fine. You just have to realize that, if they truly value you and your creation and what you're doing, they will work with you to figure out something if they really want it. And I've done all kinds of creative stuff. But yeah, you can always find a sponsor, especially if it's an event. That's the easiest way to do it.
And I'm not in the speaking world, but I would assume the long-term partnerships are pretty valuable, right? For future speaking engagements and stuff like that. Is there, if somebody's willing to work with you, if somebody's willing to raise money and they don't really bat an eye, that's a pretty good sign for ongoing business, right?
You would hope so. Yeah, definitely. Events are weird because, you can't have the same speaker back over and over and over again. But yeah, I've been back to events before, a couple years separated and stuff. And definitely, there are certain events. I can think of an event that came back to me one time, and the first time was great. And they said, hey, we've really scaled things down. But I had a great experience. So little things. And I said, oh my God, let's make it work. I will totally make it work for you. But, I knew going in that I could walk away at any point. But yeah, it's definitely ongoing. Let's face it, life is much better when it's all about relationships, true relationships, not a Facebook friend or an Instagram connection, but actually, a relationship, an acquaintance, somebody you've done business with. Maintain those things. You never, ever know when it's going to lead to something else.
Right. It's just friendship, just loving people, serving other people, doing your best as a friend to be there for them. It's not rocket science.
No, but so many people can't figure it out lately.
Yeah. I was thinking a lot about, you and I have had a conversation about Instagram and the automatic bots, and anybody that listens to this show knows how I feel about them. And I was asking myself, how do you stand out in this world where one guy's going to leave a comment on, 1,000 different Instagram pictures? It's pretty simple. You just thoughtfully craft a response, take 30 seconds or a minute to thoughtfully answer the call to action, because that's what the person wants, right? They didn't ask that question for no reason. They want a thoughtful response. And, even that can be the beginning of a relationship with people that you may think are on the moon, a million miles away from you. So they're a lot closer than you would like to believe. That's one of the, amazing lessons that I've learned from doing this podcast.
Oh, yeah. Everybody, especially, that's one of the beauties about technology and the internet is, finding someone's email address or a way to get a hold of anybody is not that hard these days. And granted, if you're actually thoughtfully reaching out to somebody, I had this happen recently. I saw a video about a pitch for a speaking at an event that I was helping judge. And it was for this company called True Colors Brewing, and they're building a brewery where they're employing active gang members and brewing beer. And I was like, wow, what a cool story. And I found the CEO on LinkedIn, and I just sent him a note. I'm like, you don't know me. I said, but, I would love you to Skype into my business class sometime because we talk a lot about social innovation and social good. Is there any way we can do this? And he's like, oh, I'll never forget. He goes, Skype sucks. He goes, I come up to Boston all the time for business. He's down in North Carolina. He's like, let me find out the next time I'm up there, and I'll see if I can swing by the school. And the next thing I know, he's coming by, and he literally came out from North Carolina for businesses and for meetings in Boston, came to my school and spoke to 2 of my classes. And I made a point to tell the students, I'm like, listen, this is all because of an email. He didn't know me. I had zero clout with him at all. I was just a guy sending him a thoughtful note on LinkedIn, and it worked. And granted, it might not always work, but the one time it does, and I've had more than one like that, where it's just like, you know what, we are just humans, and if you're being not generic, being realistic and being approachable and being courteous, and this guy's a CEO. I was like, I know you don't have much time, and he made the time, and it restored some faith in humanity, because there's been too many of the other stories with the bots and the, all that junk, the LinkedIn, hey, I got a service for you messages. Oh my gosh.
Another big part of this, doing this show for me, is that the people that I talk to they're very approachable and disarming, down to earth, happy, grateful to just be having a one-to-one conversation. So yeah, reach out. The worst that can happen is people just say no, right? I
tell my kids that all the time. I'm like, the worst I can say is no, but no one's ever going to say yes if you don't ask. I mean, that's advice for relationships, for jobs, for anything. Just because they might say no, and hearing no back sucks, but it's a lot better than always wondering, wow, what if I had asked that person out or written them an email? Go for it.
And you don't really lose anything.
No,
it's only the sense of self.
Right.
It's a fear of being vulnerable that
kicks you in the pride a little bit, but that's about it, and you get over it.
Life's too short for too much pride.
Amen to that. Yeah.
So, what's a common barrier that keeps people from realizing their full potential, and what steps do you think can people take to overcome said barrier?
I think the biggest one is the little lizard brain in the back of your head going, you can't do that, or what if you fail, or, oh, you're going to start that business, you're going to lose all your money, and your wife's going to divorce you and stuff. That little voice in the back, I think we are our biggest barrier. I mean, we challenge ourselves all the time. And if you've built a good, I think it's a double-edged sword, because if you've built the right mindset, if you've got that mindset, the adversarial mindset, you're going, that little lizard brain's good, because it should. The spidey sense of something's not right here is helpful. But the same side, when you're trying to create stuff and you're trying to do stuff, you have to learn to tell it to shut up. And it's hard. It is drastically, and anybody who tells you it's not is lying, because every single author, blogger, business owner has those things at night where it's a dark night and you're like, I don't know if I can do this anymore, or I don't know if I can make it through this. And the trick, I just think the best advice I can give is it's Nike's gene. You just do it. Get that first draft out. If you're trying to write something, get the first draft out. Nobody has to ever see it. If it's starting the business, make the business plan. If it's, making a podcast, record the first episode with a friend. You don't ever have to publish it. It's a safe environment. I think people tend to forget that we do, even though we are connected and we're always on and stuff nice, we do have the safety of doing stuff offline. We don't have to share it with everybody if we don't want to. I think people kind of forget that step. So you have to start, because if you never ever start, there's so many ideas are a million. Everybody's got ideas, but taking the ideas and even making that first step to doing something with them happens so infrequently. The other day I had a friend talking about his next book, and I said, well, is it a book idea? He goes, I don't know yet. How do I figure that out? I'm like, well, start writing a book proposal. Just start it, because you're going to quickly figure out, wow, I don't got enough for a book yet. And this is more of a magazine article or a blog post. And, but if you never start it, if you just think about it, I have this happen all the time. I mean, I have journals of ideas that I'll never get to. And I'm really good at giving this advice, and sometimes I actually do it, but that voice still goes off in the back of my head all the time to say, who are you to write? I was doing that this morning. I wrote a blog post this morning, and I'm like, who am I to do this and say this? And I am exactly the right person to do this. So I pushed through it, wrote it, and then reread it and drafted it a bunch of times before I hit publish.
So with that being said, I'm the same. I believe ideas are a dime a dozen. I've had my own fair share of ideas that I've gone down the rabbit. Like, you go down, you start doing the work, and you realize, holy shit, this is way harder than I ever could have imagined. Oh, yeah. And then the idea doesn't seem so romantic anymore. So with that being said, how do you go about choosing which idea you're going to pursue?
My rule is, when I can't shake the idea, that means I have to do it. When all of a sudden I think about it every day, or I get away from it for a week and it comes back and won't leave me alone, that's when I know I have to do it. And sometimes it is. Sometimes it's just kicking me. And unfortunately, sometimes, you get to the next step, and I have gone down the path where I'm like, oh, I'm going to start this new business and get down to quite a ways, and then all of a sudden realize, yeah, this isn't going to work, or I didn't think this through. It was still all passion. It was just passion, which passion's important, but it only gets you so far. And I chased it and then went, yeah, that wasn't the best idea. I should have had some more of my other side of the brain talking to me. But that's my philosophy, is when you can't shake it, when you're in the shower and the idea still keeps pounding on you, and and you're talking to your wife, your significant other, and it just keeps coming up in your head, those ideas are the ones you have to do. You have to get them out, because I know they keep bouncing around in my head and they distract from everything else. So I have to get them out.
That's awesome. Okay. So what's an assumption people make about their lives that you think they should spend some more time thinking about?
I mean, it sounds really cliche, but the fact that they assume they've got tomorrow, that they assume that they're going to have enough time, that, I'm whatever age, fill in your age, because I've heard it from every age. I've got enough time to do whatever I want. And then on the flip side, kind of related to that too, I think people assume that they have to have it all figured out immediately. I see students every single day who are, 18 to 21, and they've been told their whole lives they have to have it all figured out. And they assume everybody else has got it figured out. And there are the few exceptions, for sure. But the vast majority of us don't have a clue what's coming. So it's that balancing act of assuming you have to have it all figured out, but then also assuming you've got all the time in the world to get there. Every day, unfortunately, we're reminded we don't. Tomorrow's 5 minutes from now is not promised. That drives me as I record this, I'm not actively thinking about that, but this could be the last thing I ever say that's recorded and put out there. Whenever I tweet something angry, I'm always like, wow, I don't want that to be the last tweet that ever goes out, because I think about that sort of stuff. But I just think people assume that you have to have it all figured out and that you've got enough time. And the truth is, if you've got something you want to do, just do it, and realize that if you make the wrong decision, unless it's some epic decision, it's not going to totally ruin your life. There are those decisions for sure, but as long as you're smart about things, because I just try to live every day to the fullest. I mean, granted, so we all just sit around some days, but just realize that you don't know. Call that person. Say hello to that person. Call your mom and dad. Damn it! Don't delay.
Exactly. And I don't know if you read Wait But Why, but he did a whole thing on the weeks of life we have left to live. And with our mom and dad, we have around 4% of our time left to spend with them, and even less in a lot of situations. So Thanksgiving dinner, Christmas dinner, birthdays, whenever they visit, takes on this next level of importance when you're frustrated or annoyed that your mom's nagging, or that the house is too hot, or your uncle said something horrible. Just shake it off, right? This is a very special time that you're never gonna be able to get it back. And I'm right there with you. I do think about my own mortality a fair amount, because I'm a realist. Nobody's won the battle for immortality yet. I doubt it's going to be me. I'm hopeful, maybe. Who knows? But it's something to consider for sure. What's a tragic thing that you see regularly that you wish you could change?
I hate seeing kids get hurt. I hate that. Whether it's societal, where they're in a situation where their parents are, or they're in low income or poverty, extreme poverty. I hate seeing that. But then also when kids are abused or taken advantage of by people they respect and trusts, whether it's coaches, teachers, priests, any of that, anything that affects kids and dogs, you just don't mess with them, in my mind. And every day it seems that kids are, they're so vulnerable. And as a dad, I know I always promise my wife, I said, if anything happens to the kids, you're going to be visiting me in jail, because I won't stand for it. And the tragedy of seeing kids of any color, race, heritage, location in the world being hurt just gets me to my core and gets me so angry and so sad. And I've seen stuff up close. I've seen stuff, just watching the news, unfortunately, any given day there's something out there. But that's the top of the list when I think of tragic things.
What actionable steps do you think people can take to sort of minimize the suffering of kids?
Man, I wish I had the answer. I mean, I just think
we don't need a the answer, just an answer, right?
An answer. I mean, I think it's just, being more compassionate and having some more empathy would be a great place to start. I know this is not, I'm going to go way around the bend on this one. I mean, I think, the way I think about it, I think most of the problems in this world are caused by the fact that not enough people travel beyond their own vicinity, whether that's town or state, whatever your border you want to call it. But too many people surround themselves in fishbowls of their own likeness. Whether it's, these people look like me, they go to the same church, they have the same beliefs, whatever we're talking about here. And the honest truth is, someone who's traveled around the world, like I have, I don't care. You meet a family anywhere. Every single parent wants their kids to grow up happy and healthy, have food on the table, and have a happy, successful life. Doesn't matter what religion you are. Doesn't matter, your sexual preference, your gender. None of that matters. People are people, but I don't think enough people, there's so many, especially in America, so many people don't have passports or hell, haven't gone to the other side of the country, and it's not just an international thing. You haven't gone, if you live in the Northeast and you've never been to the South or the Midwest, that's a problem. And likewise, if you're in Texas and you've never been in New England or Oregon or wherever, I just think if more people got to talk to other people and get to meet other people that aren't like them, they'd be more empathetic. And that would help on so many levels, but it would certainly help, realize that, these kids who are suffering, that could be my kid. Just because they're a different color skin or they speak a different language or worship a different God doesn't make them evil, I shouldn't care less about them. I firmly believe that if people get exposed and had actual conversations and not behind a damn screen, I think they would open up so many fixes in the world.
We live in such a weird time where even with the connectivity to the rest of the world, with the algorithms on Twitter, with the algorithms on Instagram and Facebook, we can still live in a fishbowl of our own beliefs and just use our confirmation bias to seek out the same things and people that believe the exact same thing. I'm from Tennessee. Professional poker player. I started traveling out west to California, and it wasn't until I traveled out west and met. It's almost a different world. They speak English, but it's a very different world, very different belief system, very different. And until I felt that exposure, I don't know if I want to say this. I'm going to say it, and we'll see what happens. But being from Tennessee, there's a church on every corner.
Of course.
Religion, Christianity. I won't say religion because it's not. It's Christianity is number one in the South, and that's how I was raised. That's how I grew up. And it wasn't until I started visiting California, made one of my very best friends who's not a Christian, and he showed me grace from I received grace from a non-Christian. And the doctrine had taught me that people are evil, right? That people are bad. Yep. And then I learned, this person who shares no similar belief system gave me grace. And the situation specifically that I remember was I was leaving and coming back to their home, and they were going to be on vacation. So I said, I'll lock your house up, put the key under the thing, and fly home. And my friend's wife said, Brad, just take the key with you. You're going to make it back to our house before we get home anyway. And I just remember thinking wow, that was just a very simple act of love that she didn't have to do. There's not many people I would trust
right?
to come in my home when I'm out on vacation, right? So get out of your lane and build some empathy, create some different experiences than the one that you're used to. And, it can be scary, but that's really where the growth comes from.
Yeah, sit down. I am a huge Anthony Bourdain fan. And one of the things he always talked about was sit down, have a meal with somebody, because eating, sharing, conversation is that's my favorite thing to do when I travel is to sit down with complete strangers if I can. I don't get to do it all the time. But I think it opens up so many doors because too many people, you're right. The algorithms make it really easy to be in a fishbowl you don't even realize you're in.
Yeah, it's a different planet. I can go on Twitter and somebody.
Oh my gosh!
Somebody. It's a different world.
It's why every single day, I read Fox News and Huffington Post because I want to see the extremes. I want to see what both sides are. And both of them scare the crap out of me. I look at them like, whoa, and but very few people do that. Most people stay in their lane, whichever one it is. And I'm like, if you don't know what the other side's thinking, because it shouldn't be another side either. That's a whole other conversation. But, if you only get your news, your information, your pop culture from one source, that's really dangerous. And unfortunately, that's what's happening now, because more and more people are getting more and more isolated. But I want to protect myself. I only want to see happy things that make me happy. And then they forget. They don't realize all this stuff's going on.
It's a very subtle shift. You follow one person, then it recommends more people that are like that person. Before you know it, your feed is just overran by one specific narrative that you believe. And I wanted to do an experiment. It's one of those ideas that I never did anything. But just create a couple of Twitter accounts and follow people on opposite ends of the spectrum and just screenshot the differences like when the person logs on.
Tell you, I just finished this morning an amazing, and I can't think of the author off the top of my head, but it's called 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. And it talks a lot about the algorithms. It's by Yuval Noah Harari. I'm probably butchering that name. But it was I have not had a book open my mind so good in so long. And it talked about the algorithms, but also talked about history and the world, and also talked about where the world's going. And I just kind of kept getting freaked out because it was talking about terrorism and religion and algorithms and biometrics and stuff. I haven't had a book like totally blow my mind that much in a long time. And I finished it this morning before the sun even rose. So
awesome.
Definitely, I highly recommend it.
I love the enthusiasm with the recommendation.
It's
I think
good.
That's one that
so good.
I have to check out.
It's a tough read. I mean, it's thick. I wouldn't know it's on my Kindle, but I mean, it's felt thick. It's deep. It's
through
not
the Kindle. It felt thick.
It felt real thick. I mean, lots of highlights going on in it. So it was a good book.
What's a piece of conventional wisdom that you disagree with?
Oh, easily. Everything happens for a reason. I hate that. And I hate it going back to talking about my grandfather, because that's why I was told he died. That's why he got pancreatic cancer and died when I was 9 years old, was because everything happens for a reason. Ever since then, no. And I know a lot of people follow that belief, but I firmly don't believe that. I also don't believe it's the other extreme, that it's complete chaos and we have no free will. I don't believe that either. I think it's somewhere in between, but that's my absolute least favorite saying in the world. And I know a lot of people believe that. They believe that everything happens for a reason. And anytime something bad happens, and no one ever says that for good stuff. No one ever says, everything happens for a reason, that you got that promotion or the baby was born. No, it's always about bad stuff. And I firmly believe that's just human conditioning trying to, make people feel better. So I hate that saying.
Trying to find a positive in a negative situation.
Yeah.
You could just say everything happens. I think that's a true statement. The reason
isn't that what
something,
shit happens?
Shit happens. We apply the reasoning afterwards to try to make sense of it.
Yep.
What's something related to performance that people waste a lot of time on that doesn't give them much in the way of results?
Searching for like the perfect productivity hack, finding the shortcuts. I think everybody is trying to find, now I've got no problem with optimizing and finding the efficient, finding the value path through stuff. Totally down with that. But I think when people are always like, well, if I find the right to-do list, or if I find the right writing software, I can be a novelist. Well, you could write it in longhand on notebook paper and it would get you there. I think too many people assume that there are always shortcuts or a silver bullet. They're always looking for that. And there is so few of those. And unfortunately, you can spend so much time trying to find that shortcut that you never get there, and you would have gotten there faster by actually just doing the work. And I see that all the time with, whatever sort of person you want to talk about. I see it all the time where, which software are you using? What camera are you using? Our iPhones have more power than, the great Ansel Adams had, in his camera. And it doesn't, people always assume that the tool matters more than the skill. And that's just not true.
And I'm in podcasting groups, and every day there's 10 questions about the audio equipment that's needed to be used for a podcast. And I'm like, who cares? Like, what does it, like, we have amazing things that do a damn good job. If the content is worthy, people will listen. Like when I was 8 years old, I watched movies on my grandparents' 19-inch tube low definition TV, and some of my favorite movies I watched in exactly that way. Just focus on the content and making things extraordinary, and they'll listen. It doesn't matter if there's some crackling or if it's not 100% smooth. Once you get famous from your extraordinary content, then you can go nuts and buy yourself a $100,000 system, and you'll be good to go.
Yeah, I used to love, there was a YouTube channel that what they used to do is they used to take photographers, famous photographers, and they would give them like a disposable camera, or like I vividly remember someone giving a Barbie camera to this photographer and say, go take pictures. And they would make beautiful images. Yes, it was harder. Yes, they couldn't necessarily get the lighting right, and they didn't have the depth of field they wanted, but it doesn't matter, a pencil, this pen that I got in my hand can be used to, I'm not going to write Hemingway, but Hemingway with this pen would write Hemingway. So it's just, don't focus. And yes, you talk about podcasting. That conversation has been going on since day one. I remember I bought my first microphone because it looked cool. I vividly remember. It was this cool black, it was like $100 and it looked cool. I'm like, that's the one I want. And later people are like, well, CC, why didn't you get the blah? I'm like, I don't know. Does it sound okay? I've done 100 episodes. I'm being paid to podcast. Oh, I'm like, yeah. Yes, it does. Yes, you want to make it as high quality as you can, no matter what you're doing. But like you said, if the quality is not there, the quality of what's inside, it doesn't matter how great it sounds if nobody cares what you said.
One of my first purchases as a poker player was a set of $300 Oakleys that were like reflective, so that I could wear them while because that was going to up my cognitive ability, my problem solving, and make me a better player.
So let me, I'm curious. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
I'm curious. Have you ever, I don't want you to give away the answer, but have you ever noticed ticks that you have? I know they're very important in poker, and fixed them and got rid of them? Yeah. Okay. I assume that's something you had to think of. I've never talked to a professional poker player before.
Yeah, I mean, there's physical tells, and you can...
Sorry, that's what I meant, tell, not a tick.
I can tell a quick story.
Yeah.
It's my show. Fuck it.
Exactly.
I can do what I want, right?
Yeah.
I had a guest tell me the other day he was going to tell me something, and he's like, well, I don't know if you want to hear this, but I'm going to tell you anyway, because I'm on... I was like, I'm going to take that. I played poker with this guy named Joey for 2 or 3 years. He's a lawyer, very smart, very intelligent guy, not very good at playing cards, and he had a physical tell. Every time he was weak, and I would reach to grab my chips to bet, he would reach for his chips, right? It's classic, strong, weak, weak, strong. 2 years, every time we played, same thing. I would reach for my chips, I would watch him, he would reach for his chips, and then I would bet, and he would get mad and fold. And everything culminated at about the 2-year mark. I did it again. And he made a ball to fist and slammed the table and went, how does he always know? Just couldn't reverse engineer. But
that's funny.
I've been in giant pots before, playing against world-class professionals that I very much respect, and I've done things. And I've thought to myself, "Oh, please God, I hope they didn't see that."
Oh, that must be stressful, yeah.
Or I've created a pattern. I've done something. There's a solution here that he's going to use to crush me, and if he can find it, I'm screwed. And just waiting to see if they do. And typically, if they're world class, they're going to find it. They find it and they crush you.
Nice.
Okay, back to regularly scheduled program. Imagine there's a 20-year-old carbon copy of yourself listening to this interview. What wisdom would you like to impart on 20-year-old CC?
I would tell him that all the things he's thinking about doing, but questioning if it's the right thing to do as a new kid out of college with a soon-to-be wife and soon-to-be kid, to do it. And that it'll work out, because worst case scenario, if you fall flat on your face, you can always go get a job. You can find a way to make money always. It doesn't have to be, the big consulting gig you thought you wanted and needed. It doesn't have to be the huge paycheck. You can always find a way to make the money to pay for your family and support your family. So don't freak out and stress about it. And I'd tell him that he's going to have really 2 amazing kids, so get ready for it.
Very nice. So, CC, you don't live, I guess, or you haven't lived, I guess, the typical lifestyle as far as creating and doing different things and sort of dancing to the beat of your own drum. Could you tell me what your typical morning routine looks like today, or maybe even 10 years ago or whenever you were in full-on creation mode?
I've had the same morning routine for a while. It's changed. It's definitely gotten earlier the last couple of years due to having a dog that likes to get up and wakes me up at 4 a.m. every morning. But I've always had what I call the morning surf, where I firmly believe, as someone who creates for a living, I need to consume as well from a variety of sources. So first thing I do when I get up is pour a cup of coffee, and then I literally go through my morning surf, and I can picture, I check my 2 email accounts. I go up to Instagram. I just to see what people have said about my photos. I go back and look at them later. I look at Twitter. I look at Facebook. And then I read the news. I read the New York Times and the Apple News apps just to see what's going on in the world. And then I go back and I look through Instagram, look at pictures, watch stories, because I want to consume a variety of topics before I dive in. I don't turn on the TV, almost never. And then lately, I've then followed up by reading. I'll try to spend an hour reading where my dog gets me up at 4. Nobody else is up in my house till 6 at the earliest, 6:30. So I try to spend at least an hour reading. And when I read, I go back and I have a rule where I go back and forth between nonfiction and fiction, because I think too many people read only the stuff that applies to them. Like, I could just read business books. I could read business books the rest of my days. There's plenty of them. But, I just read a book called The Poet X. It won the Young Adult Book National Book Prize. I was like, I want to read that. Let me check that out. It was beautiful. And then I'm reading the 21 lessons for 21st century. I go back and forth because I want to expose myself to different things. And that's usually my morning. And then my wife gets up and I have coffee with her before she leaves for work. And then I make sure my daughter gets up and gets her out the door for school. And then once everybody's gone in the house, then I come into my office. I'm blessed to have my own office. I come into my office, and that's when I start getting to work, whether it's developing photos or working on a blog post or preparing my lectures for the next day. I've got a nice schedule right now where I'm teaching 3 days a week. I teach Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So Tuesdays and Thursdays I have off, and those are days to create or sometimes just do nothing. It's just to mentally recharge. But that's my morning almost all. I know some people say don't touch your phone, but I do. It's all on my phone or my iPad first thing in the morning. But I don't come into my office, which is this is where I create, and I don't come in here until I'm ready to start going to work.
For somebody that hosts a podcast called The Process, I'm very anti-heuristics. So whatever works for you, right? It doesn't just because something works for you doesn't mean that it works for everybody else. Do you go about planning or scheduling the things that you're going to create ahead of time so that you just you have a list?
I wish I did. I wish I did. I tell my client, I have a whole chapter in my first book talking about making a content calendar.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I don't right now, but sometimes I have a list on my whiteboard of I will write down things I want to do, if there's major projects I want to do. But no, there's my WordPress, now Squarespace has a list of drafts, posts. I have notebooks galore of ideas. I wish I was that disciplined to plan it out. Sometimes I do, but very, very rarely. Right now I'm setting up my first store to sell photography, to sell fine art prints of some of my photographs because people have asked to buy them. So I'm figuring out what kind of content do I need to supplement that. Boom, when's it going live? I don't know. Would I like to have it before the holidays? Sure, but I don't know if it's going to happen. I wish I was more disciplined about my content creation. I really do, and I've always been horrible at it. Horrible at being disciplined.
It sounds like you have enough irons in the fire, though, so you don't have you're not lacking from things to choose to work on.
No, I never get to a point where I'm like, what? I have nothing to create. The creative juices are always flowing, whether or not they're getting anywhere. But no, I that's a whole other conversation. But no, there's always, as I look around my office, I can see my cameras. I've got some frames for pictures I want to frame. I have a camera sitting here. There's always things that I want to do. So no, I'm never short of. I have a million books I want to write. If I ever get to retire, I'm going to have plenty to keep me busy.
Since you wake up every morning at 4 a.m., which would be just backbreaking to me, maybe the hardest thing that I would have to do as a human being, because that is not how I'm made. What does your evening routine look like? Have you taken any specific steps to make sure that when you wake up at 4, you're not just ready to murder somebody?
No, it's funny. It took a long time. So I used to be a night owl. I used to get my most productive work done once the rest of the family went to bed.
Yeah.
I'd be up till midnight, 2 a.m. Now I'm in bed. If I'm up to 10 o'clock, I'm way past my bedtime. Usually about 9 o'clock, I go to bed. Phones aren't allowed in my bedroom. My wife has her phone because she works in healthcare, so she has to have a phone ready to get paged. But I never bring my phone in the bedroom. I'm very fortunate. I lay my head down, I fall asleep, and I sleep very soundly. The concept of insomnia I don't know what it is. So yeah, no, I pretty much, that's the thing. If I go to bed by 9, getting up at 4 is 7 hours of sleep. Now, granted, because I don't know what it is, my dog literally is clockwork, 4 o'clock, and I've tried everything to make it later. But, so I'm always looking at the clock going, wait, is it worth watching another episode on Netflix? Or because then I do the math of how I'm going to have to get up and function. But I've gotten now, it's been about a year and a half, and I've gotten used to it. It works out. My wife and I usually watch something to unwind before bed and then pass out. Make the coffee at night. Programmable coffee pot's the only thing that makes 4 a.m. possible. The other day, I forgot to hit the on button to program it. I woke up and there was no coffee, and that was a long 20 minutes waiting for the coffee to come. 20 o'clock in the morning, 20 minutes is long.
What kind of coffee maker you got that takes 20 minutes?
I don't know if it takes 20. It felt like an hour. I don't know how long it takes. Probably doesn't. Yes, you're right. 20 minutes would be long, but it felt like forever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an amazing blessing, being able to lay your head down and go to sleep. Yeah. Trust me on that. That is something that I used to be able to do, but can no longer do.
Oh no!
You value that.
Oh, I do.
So you touched on what you read. Are there any blogs or resources that you're a rabid fan of?
It's funny. I used to read blogs more back when you could have like Google Reader and Feedly, and have it reading RSS feeds. It was much easier to read. I mean, now it's kind of like evolved more into newsletters. So, like Chase Jarvis comes to mind. He's a photographer and CEO. Anything Chase writes, I read. Chris Penn is a business, and he's also a good friend of mine. I love his newsletter that he sends out all the time, and anything he creates, I check out. I watch a lot of YouTube. I'm a huge Casey Neistat fan. I love what he creates, even though he's an idiot for riding his boosted board through the New York streets. He's going to die on video someday, and he's a father, so that freaks me out. It totally freaks me out. What else? I mean, Chase comes to mind. I know as soon as we stop talking, I'm going to think of a million others of them.
That's how it
works.
But
I get a lot of watching Instagram and Instagram stories. I have some friends who are using Instagram like a blogging platform now. More like Courtney Scott comes to mind, where some people may think she's just a beautiful travel blogger, but she's making short films now of her travels, and yeah, she's beautiful and stunning, but she's also super talented and really knows her stuff. And so I watch her stuff every morning if she has something new. But yeah, I mean, those are, and I like going to Creative Live for my classes, Chase Jarvis's company. I like taking classes there. I take classes through Masterclass as well, although those aren't as good as I hoped for. And of course, LinkedIn Learning, which I teach at too. They have good programs that I get content from all the time.
A lot of resources there for people to
try to help,
go chase after. What actions do you regularly take that allow your soul to breathe?
Go out for walks with no technology. I will have my phone in my pocket. Don't get me wrong, because I'm not going to leave the house without my phone. Plus, I have to take pictures. But going out, no music, no headphones, and just go for a walk. Nature's where my soul recharges. And I have to go camping every so often too, because I have to really get off the grid. But yeah, just going for a walk, and even if it's just walking around campus. If I'm inside for too long, I get really twitchy, so I need fresh air. Or a long hot shower. That also fixes my soul too, just to kind of That's part of the fun when I'm working from home. Taking a shower at 2 in the afternoon is like, it's better than a coffee break. It just reinvigorates you rather than taking it in the morning. But nature's my thing. Going for walks is what saves me.
I'm with you. I love nature too. We went on a trip to Yosemite this year, and it was
haven't been there yet.
Mind blowing.
Oh,
you got to go.
I know.
It almost burned down without you ever going.
I haven't been to the Smoky Mountains down in your neighborhood either yet.
I've been toying with this question. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see how it goes. You'll be my guinea pig.
Ooh.
What's a story you've always believed about yourself or the world that you're starting to suspect isn't true?
That people are inherently good. Which anybody who knows me and hears those words come out of my mouth are going to be shocked, because anybody who knows me personally knows I am an eternal optimist. I find the silver lining on everything. But lately, I'm starting to worry as evil in all of its different forms keeps showing its face, and that certain people, certain groups, certain things are they're more forthright. What used to keep their thoughts to themselves or keep things in the shadows or keep things out of the public viewing are now letting it out. And every day, I swear I get more examples. There's still, don't get me wrong, I firmly believe there's still plenty of good in the world. But I'm starting to wonder if humans are, that whole thing about being inherently good, I'm starting to question whether or not that is actually true or not.
I've went down the rabbit. I'm an eternal optimist too. I believe in the best in humanity. I love people, and there have been times in the last year where it's been hard for me to get off the couch. It's been a struggle.
Yeah,
where you just think like, wow, like why are these things continuing to happen? Why is this still a thing? And it can be overpowering. I made a podcast episode specifically on my own process of feeling hope, because that's something that I struggle with. I struggle with feeling hopeful about the future of humanity, especially with getting exposure to some of the things that I've been exposed to in the last year. It's a great answer, and I can certainly relate.
And the one thing, and I'll share it's funny. There's this gentleman. He'll laugh. There's this guy, Brad Montague. He runs a company called the Montague Workshop. His most famous thing is he's the creator of Kid President. If you've ever seen Kid President video, he's the co-creator of that. But I remember I interviewed him for a podcast I was doing for somebody else, and we talked about this. And his voice comes in my head all the time, where he's like, because I asked him, and I said, "You are always happy. What the heck? How do you do it?" And I don't remember if this was on the podcast or after, because we talked for like an hour after we stopped recording. And he said, "Listen," he goes, "the only thing that keeps me going is I know if we all stop trying to put out positivity, and if we all stop hoping for the best, it's doomed." He's like, so even if I'm just one person giving out hope, putting out positivity, even when it's hard, if I do that, somebody else is going to see it, and at least one person's going to see it and go, all right, I'm not going to give up hope yet, because he hasn't given up hope. And it's the only thing that keeps me going sometimes. And I texted him. I don't even know him that well. I love him to death, but I don't know him personally. And I remember I texted him recently saying, "Hey, thanks again for that podcast." That was like 2 years ago now, but I keep going back to that, and that's the thing that keeps me going someday. Because it is, you're totally right. It is really hard, especially when I've got kids who are old enough to understand what's going on in the world, and they ask questions, and I don't have the answers. It's tough.
Yeah, and that's amazing wisdom too, by the way, to be hopeful, because hope spreads. Hope's contagious. Somebody else who is lacking hope might hear that message and feel a little more hopeful, which is good for humanity as a whole.
Amen to that.
Have you ever strongly believed something only to reverse course later on in life, and what led to that change?
The first thing that comes to mind, I was raised in an Italian Catholic family. Altar boy all the way up till I was 15, 16, church every Sunday, CCD every Sunday afternoon, all that stuff. And as I got older, I started asking questions. I started research. I always loved religion, finding out other religions. And I started reading about other religions and started going, wait a minute, what is this? What is this where ours is the only right religion and everybody else is wrong? I don't get that. I started asking questions. And There's nothing wrong with the Catholic Church. But I remember growing up, I was super devout. Well, yeah, that's a whole other conversation. Remember when we were back talking about kids being hurt? But yeah, right. But I mean, another thing. But no, I remember and I started questioning, and I got confirmed because my mom said I had to, which is against the rules. Granted, it's supposed to, but I remember I got confirmed to get it done, get out of the way, and then I was like, wait. I'm now a church adult in the eyes of I read the Bible. I read the rules. I'm now an adult. I can make my own decisions. You can't make me go to church anymore. And my mom can't argue. I love her. She can't argue though. And I can. And so I won that, I was like, sorry, Mom. That's what it said. Priest told me, I still love that. I still send Christmas cards to my priest from when I was little. Stay in touch with him. I love him. But that's the first thing that comes to mind where it was, unquestionable faith. And then I just got a little older and started asking questions. And I still think faith is a super important thing. Super important. But it doesn't play as strong a role in my life now.
We're kindred spirits, my friend. Question everything and then look at the data. And a lot of times the data that you look at tells a different story than the one you've been telling yourself. And it's hard to reconcile those two things. What's a project you're working on that's near and dear to your heart?
I am working on my next book.
What is it?
So it's funny because this is National Novel Writing Month right now. And originally I was trying to write it as literary nonfiction. And I got halfway down the road and I'm like, I don't think it's the way I want to tell this story. So it's a kind of a sequel to Amazing Things Will Happen. It's more life advice, but targeted at a younger audience. As a college professor, I'm always answering the same questions over and over to students. And as a father, I realize my kids ask the same questions. So I'm going to try to take all that advice and put it together in a book. So awesome. That's what I'm hoping. The plan is, since November didn't work, because I tried doing it while teaching, my semester ends here in a couple of weeks, and then I have a nice long Christmas break. So I'm hoping to really chip away at it then, but we'll see what happens.
So you're looking at maybe releasing it next year?
Possibly. That'd be nice. Well, I have to write it. And then pitch my publisher and see if they want to publish it or not, and then figure out what else I do with it. So
have to write it, see if anybody likes it, and then
and then worst case I self-publish it because I wanted to write it for myself. So, but there's plenty of options out there. But that's the big project I'm working on. That and setting up my print store for my website, selling my photographs, because that's freaky and crazy but exciting.
If you could share one truth with the world, what would it be?
Wow, that is a deep question, man.
Most people struggle on the one before this, the truth they got.
I mean, am I supposed to share a truth about myself or just some truth I want everybody to know?
That you want everybody to know.
I want everybody to know, okay, that your life matters. That, while it's a blink in the eye and it's a drop of sand in the world that it is, your life, no matter what, no matter how bad you are, does matter to somebody. And I wish more people realize that, because it's really easy to get in the dark times and say, well, and no one's going to miss me. But the truth is, everybody matters to somebody. I wish more people realize that.
That's beautiful, man. Love it. And final thing, where can my audience find you on the World Wide Webs?
So pretty much everywhere. If you go to cc-chapman.com, you can find me. And then on every social network out there, pretty much I'm cc_Chapman. And Twitter and Instagram are where I'm babbling every single day mostly. So that's the easiest. But yeah, go to my website. There's links everywhere.
Awesome, man. It's been a pleasure.